Hi, this is Andre Cohen, and we're going to talk a little bit about these three concepts, and hopefully it's not backwards. I'll try and see if I can flip it around when we do the, when you actually see the video. So it looks backwards now as I'm taping it, but hopefully it'll flip around as we talk about these things. So, so the first thing I want to talk about a little bit is SCORM, because SCORM will be well, first let's talk about what SCORM is. So SCORM is an acronym, and it stands for Shareable Content Object Reference Model. And what SCORM basically is a protocol that allows you to create content dynamic courses that can be implemented in a number of LMSs, learning management systems. And so SCORM is the way that or the protocol that you'll use to create these courses so that they can be implemented in learning management systems. Think of this as very much kind of like a protocol, like before you do, you type in a web page, right? You're supposed to do www.whatever.com or .edu or .org and that kind of stuff. So the SCORM has a certain language and a certain way of being, and usually you'll create your content and you'll export it as SCORM. In the course, you'll see that there are a couple of examples, or there's a whole description of SCORM compliance and the things that you need to do to be SCORM compliant. But for the purposes of your final project, all you need to understand is that once you create your course, you want to export the SCORM, the Shareable Content Object Reference Model. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the SCORM you want to use is 1.4. If there's a higher level of SCORM, you want to go ahead and use that because that's the most recent, but I think it's SCORM 1.4. And so this will allow you to take whatever you're doing and import that into a learning management system. We'll talk about a learning management system, but before we get to the learning management system, I want to talk about a tool you can use to create your content. And this is actually the one that I want you to use in developing your final project, okay? So the difference between PowerPoint and SCORM objects is that PowerPoint can only be implemented as either a JPEG or a PowerPoint presentation, but there's no functionality in there at all. What SCORM compliant pieces do is that they allow you to put assessments in there, they allow you to put PowerPoint slides in there so that they are measurable. So that the whole idea is that these shareable pieces can be shared among multiple learning management systems. However, the activities that are in here can also be shared. So that's the whole sense behind the SCORM methodology. And so the shareable content becomes important because you may want to use it in different ways. Some SCORM you can just put on a CD and give to your students. You don't even necessarily have to use a learning management system. You can just post it online, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the tool that I'm going to introduce to you that you can use to create your SCORM compliant courses. And so the most dynamic part about that is the power that you have when using SCORM compliant courses. Because it is cross-functional, cross-platform, you have the ability to use it in different places and in different ways and in different times. So that becomes the most powerful piece of the functionality, so that you're not limited to one way of using the information. Where, again, PowerPoint is very limiting in that you can only use it in certain kinds of ways. PDF is another piece that people like to use, but you can't measure anything currently in as a PDF. It usually is just an electronic document. But using SCORM or using SCORM compliant courses, you have all of these things. You can include puzzles, you can do assessments, you can add PDFs, you can do Word documents, you can have people download things. This really becomes almost like a learning management system in and of itself, but it actually allows you to import. It's very focused on the content export, so you can import that into different things. So so that's the conversation we'll have about SCORM. So next I want to just have a little bit of conversation about OODO, and that's U-D-U-T-U, OODO. And if I'm not mistaken, OODO is Swahili. It's a Swahili word that means learning or grouping together, working together, cooperative, that kind of stuff. And so OODO.org is what I would encourage you to do. And what OODO does is it allows you to create course content. And those assessments that I was talking about, so those quizzes, those puzzles, those games, those interactive pieces, this is where you can make those things happen. So if you go to OODO.org, you can go to the course creation pieces, and once you created your course, you can export it as SCORM, which now means what? What does that mean? It means that once you've exported your course as SCORM, you can now import it into a learning management system. And we'll talk about the learning management system that we're going to prepare this stuff for, because I think many of your school districts are probably using this, and if they're not, they will probably be moving to this. And if they're not, you can create one yourself, all right? A couple of things about OODO that's really great. We talked earlier about PowerPoint and PDF not having a way to measure or to interact with as a teacher or as course content, not being able to use those as an interactive piece. Here with OODO, you can import them, both the slides and the PDFs, as SCORM content, which now means that you can measure people's participation, whether they looked at stuff or they didn't. One of the things, particularly when we talk about using technology for online courses, is our ability to actually measure people's participation in the process. So if we're not measuring, if we're not looking at how long someone's done that, if we don't have the analytics for their participation in a class, we can't be necessarily guaranteed that when it comes to the assessment that they're going to get everything that we want them to get. And so the learning management system, OODO as the course creation piece, becomes really important, because now we have a way to measure that when we export that and we put that into our learning management system. The other part is that you have a number of ways in OODO to do assessments. There's a whole section on assessments where you can do multiple choice quizzes, you can do problems matching, you can do scenarios. You can create scenarios with different outcomes. You can give people feedback on how they're doing with their scenarios. But the assessment piece is extremely important as we do that. The other piece that I didn't write up here that I think is important is that you can also add media. You can also add media as a part of your OODO course creation. So that makes it a much more rich environment. So you're not just reading PowerPoint slides or just looking at PDFs, but these assessments mixed with the media allows us to have a richer experience. It also, in terms of teaching and learning, part of the reason that I like doing video or adding videos to my presentations is that no matter how many times students look at the presentation, they're consistently getting the same thing. And so I can be guaranteed that in terms of the curriculum that I'm presenting, that folks are getting it, where if I'm just doing slides or PDFs, people may skip through those things, and I can't be necessarily guaranteed that they've read every piece. But when I do a video or I do an animation or a cartoon, if they watch it, and I can tell when people watch it, But if they watch it, I can be guaranteed that that curriculum piece is being shared, and is being shared consistently. So there may be things in your classroom or concepts that you may want to stand in front of a whiteboard or a chalkboard using whatever technology you have to capture that, so that that becomes a part of your lecture series or part of your sharing with your students, so that it is consistent. And I would say that consistency is probably the most important aspect when trying to measure students' learning and your ability as a teacher to actually instruct. So OODO.org, and you'll just set up an account. Once you've kind of worked your way through that, you can export your course as SCORM. One thing I would encourage, and I encourage this in any activity that you're engaged in, particularly online, is to save often. Even if you thought you saved, you need to save again. There are two types of people in this world: those who lose data and those who will lose data. All right? So make sure that you save often and you save a lot. I'm going to stop this video here, and then we'll come back and we'll start talking about a learning management system that I want you to engage with. So we just talked a little bit about OODO, which is for course creation, and we talked a little bit about SCORM, the Shareable Content Object Reference Model, that allows us to take that content and use it in a number of different ways. So I'll be right back, and we'll start with our learning management system.